Okay, wait. If you're watching on YouTube and you've shown up to troll, before hitting dislike and leaving a negative, nasty comment, consider watching the video first, okay? I was really surprised over the weekend. People started sending me links to a tweet that Jordan Peterson sent out saying, David, you've got to talk about this dumb thing that Jordan Peterson said. And I presumed it would be some kind of esoteric, nuanced statement which could be interpreted 10 different ways, or I'd critique it and his followers would say, no, David, you're misunderstanding what he said, or that's not what he meant, or you just don't have the capacity to know what he's really talking about. But then I saw the tweet and I started to wonder whether something was wrong, because this is bizarre even for Jordan Peterson. And I'm going to explain this entire thing to you. And if you haven't heard of Jordan Peterson, he's a psychologist and sort of self-help dude whose teachings have really resonated with many young men around the world. He came to prominence for his opposition to a bill in Canada, which he said would threaten to jail people for using the wrong gender pronouns, which of course was never true. And Peterson suggested that misgendering people or using the wrong pronouns could be considered hate speech, which could conceivably get you jail time. But of course, misgendering people has never been considered hate speech by Canadian courts. Canadian courts have a really high threshold for what counts as hate speech. But the entire thing worked really well for Peterson to build him a big following. So he's doing very well. So anyway, over the weekend, Jordan Peterson tweeted positive comments about a guy named Bjorn Lomborg. For our discussion today, you don't have to know anything about Lomborg, because what matters is what Peterson said about him, which was via Twitter that, quote, he's casually called a climate change denier, for example, which is an appallingly treacherous term of criticism used to denigrate someone personally by associating them with Holocaust deniers. The ethics of anyone who employs it should be instantly questioned. So layer one is that in no way does calling someone a climate change denier imply a reference that they're in any way like Holocaust deniers. I mean, just it in no way whatsoever. Contrary to Peterson's own views, he seems to have been triggered by innocuous language, climate denier, and he's trying to police language such that those whose views on climate change are not based on science are not called deniers anymore. And then he's also virtue signaling by calling into question the ethics of anyone who uses the term climate change denier. I look around, I looked hard, and there's no evidence whatsoever anywhere that the term climate denier is deliberately or even by sheer consequence referencing or implying anything like Holocaust denial. Peterson is arguing that calling people deniers of things is effectively an ad hominem looking to associate them with people who deny the Holocaust. I mean, it's patently ludicrous and absurd. Climate change, the latest neo-Marxist postmodernist plot, which is absolutely destroying the lives of young men everywhere by questioning the archetypes of dominant hierarchies. I guess I need to reset. I went into Jordan Peterson talking point coma there. So that's layer one, okay? I mean, truly just a dumb thing to say. But here's where it gets even better. In 2016, Peterson tweeted that a University of Toronto professor is a biological sex denier, saying, quote, you Toronto prof, a biological sex denier on Canadian public television with me. Jordan Peterson absolutely obliterates Jordan Peterson, right? He is now claiming that the phraseology of ex-denier, insert here, denier, is an ad hominem meant to link people to Holocaust denial. And he did the exact same thing when he called the University of Toronto professor a biological sex denier. How do people listen to this guy? I mean, truly picking and choosing when to be offended, going against his own stated principles, but more importantly, saying really silly things like calling someone a climate change denier when that's what they're doing. They're denying the overwhelming established science on climate change. is like likening someone to a Holocaust denier. And actually, Pat, many people in our audience may not know, but aside from his self-help ideas, Peterson has become a pretty stalwart climate science denier.
Huh, that's pretty interesting. You know, when you listen to Jordan Peterson speak, he often talks very slowly. He takes these long pauses, and you get the impression that he really wants to formulate his ideas and make sure that he's communicating clearly. And yet he seems to routinely have gaffes like these, like when he talks about enforced monogamy or, I don't know, many, many different examples, climate change denial, all this stuff. You wouldn't suspect that from someone who chooses his words so carefully, and yet Peterson repeatedly makes gaffes like these.
Yes, and here is another one. And if anyone wants to defend this, by all means, I'm ready to hear from you. And it is not just because he is on the right that I am talking about him. I also talk about people on the left who say things that don't make sense. And that's exactly what I'm going to do next, talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So I think everybody's going to end up upset with me because of this segment.